Most people think a beautiful planted aquarium starts with buying a huge pile of plants. They see a tank covered in green stems, thick background growth, soft foreground carpets, floating plants on the surface, and leaves growing out of every corner. And they assume the owner must have spent a fortune on plants from the very beginning. But that is not how many of the best planted tanks are actually built. A lot of them begin with only a few small portions, a handful of cheap stem plants, one or two rhizome plants tied to wood or stone, maybe a few floating plants. And then, time does the rest. If you know where to cut, how to replant, what plants are worth buying, and most importantly, how to leave the tank alone long enough for plants to settle in, you can turn a few dollars of aquarium plants into an entire green tank without constantly buying more. The mistake is thinking you need to fill the aquarium on day one. The smarter way is to buy the right, easy plants, keep them alive, trim them at the right time, and let the tank become its own little plant factory. When beginners first get into planted tanks, they often make the same expensive mistake. They look at mature aquascapes online and try to copy the final result immediately. They buy red plants, carpeting plants, delicate stems, rare varieties, and plants that were grown in perfect conditions with strong light, injected CO2, rich fertilization, and very stable water. Then they put all of those plants into a brand new aquarium that is not settled yet. The substrate is still adjusting. The bacteria colony is still weak. The lighting schedule is often too long. The nutrients are not balanced. And the fish load may already be too high. After a few weeks, the expensive plants melt. Older leaves get holes. Algae starts growing on slow leaves. Stems float loose. And the tank looks worse than when it started. The problem is not always that the plants were bad. The real problem is that the tank was not ready for difficult plants, and the beginners spent money on looks before building stability. A cheaper and more reliable planted tank starts differently. Instead of asking, what plants look the most impressive today, ask, what plants can survive my mistakes and multiply over time? That one question can save you a lot of money. For this method, the best plants have 3 traits. They grow fairly fast. They forgive imperfect beginner conditions, and they can be propagated by trimming, dividing, or spreading naturally. Fast-growing stem plants are the backbone of this method, because every healthy trimming can become a new plant. Plants like water sprite, easy hygrophila, beginner-friendly rotala, simple ludwigia, hornwort, bacopa, and pearlweed can fill space quickly if you give them steady light and do not keep disturbing them. These are the plants that turn one bunch into 2, then 2 into 4, and before long, they become the background of the whole tank. Rhizome plants are different, but they are still valuable. Anubias, Java fern, and Bucephalandra grow much more slowly than stem plants, so they will not fill a tank in a few weeks. But they are tough, long-lasting, and they become more valuable as they age. The key is that you should never bury the rhizome under the substrate. The roots can touch the substrate, but the thick horizontal stem should stay above it. Tie it to wood, glue it to rock, or wedge it gently into a crevice. When the plant becomes large enough, you can divide the rhizome into smaller pieces, as long as each piece has healthy leaves and roots. It is slower than trimming stem plants, but it is one of the safest ways to build a planted tank that lasts for years. Floating plants are probably the cheapest living filter you can put in a low-tech aquarium. A few small pieces of frogbit, salvinia, or small water lettuce can multiply quickly under steady light. They pull excess nutrients from the water, shade the tank slightly, compete with algae, and make a new aquarium feel more stable while the rooted plants are still developing. But floating plants need control. If you let them cover the entire surface, the plants below will get weaker because not enough light reaches them. A good rule is to keep part of the surface open and remove extra floaters every week. Do not think of floating plants as decoration only. In a cheap planted tank, they are also a living safety net. The main method that fills a tank for free is trimming stem plants correctly. Imagine a stem plant that has grown tall enough to reach the surface. A beginner might look at it and think the plant is done growing, or they might pull the whole stem out and replant it somewhere else. But the better move is to cut only the healthy top section. You want a cutting that is long enough to have strength, usually around 4 to 6 inches, with healthy leaves and a firm stem. After cutting it, remove the lower leaves from the part that will go into the substrate. This matters because buried leaves usually rot. They break down under the gravel or soil, create mess, and can make the cutting weaker. Once the lower part of the stem is clean, plant it into the substrate with tweezers. Push it deep enough to stay in place, but do not crush the stem. Leave a little space between each cutting so light can reach the lower leaves and water can move around the plants. This is where the magic happens. The old, rooted stem does not become useless after you cut the top. In many stem plants, the lower portion responds by sending out side shoots, so the original plant becomes bushier. At the same time, the trimmed top grows roots and becomes a new plant. That means one plant has turned into 2 growing points. Later, both of those can be trimmed again. Then 2 become 4. 4 become 8. This is why stem plants are the cheapest way to build a full planted aquarium. You are not just trimming for appearance, you are multiplying the tank. Every healthy trimming is free planting material, but there are a few ways to ruin this process. Do not cut the plant too close to the substrate, because the old stem needs enough leaves and energy to recover. Do not replant cuttings too tightly, because crowded stems block light from each other, and the lower leaves can die off. Do not keep pulling the same cutting out every day to check for roots. New cuttings need time to anchor. They may look a little strange at first. They may lean. They may drop an older leaf. That does not mean you should disturb them. In a planted tank, patience often does more than your hands do. The same idea applies after every trimming session. Most beginners treat trimmings like trash. They cut the tank, throw away the extra stems, and then later buy more plants to fill empty spaces. That makes no sense if the trimmings are healthy. In a low-tech aquarium, trimming is not waste. Trimming is your free plant supply. Any strong top cutting can be replanted into an empty area, used to thicken the background, added behind wood or stone, or moved into a separate grow-out tank. Even small pieces can be useful if they have enough stem and healthy leaves. You do not need every cutting to be perfect. You only need to keep the strongest ones and let them grow. One of the best tricks is to create a small nursery corner in the back of the aquarium. This does not need to look beautiful. It can be a hidden area behind hardscape or in the back corner where you place extra cuttings that are not ready for the main layout yet. Over a few weeks, those cuttings will show you which ones are strong. Some will grow straight, some will branch, some may melt or fail. That is fine. Once the strongest cuttings become healthy, you can move them to the main viewing area. This turns the back corner of your tank into a plant nursery, and it keeps you from buying more plants just because one area looks empty. There is another reason this method works so well. A planted tank becomes more stable as the plant mass increases. More healthy plants means more nutrient uptake, more surfaces for beneficial bacteria, more shade, more oxygen during the light period, and more competition against algae. But you do not have to reach that stage by spending a lot of money all at once. You can let the tank grow into that stability gradually. In fact, gradual growth is often better. The plants adapt to your water, your light, your substrate, and your maintenance routine. The tank becomes full because the plants are already comfortable in that system, not because you forced a finished aquascape into an immature aquarium. Rhizome plants need a slower approach. With Anubias and Java fern, the most common beginner mistake is burying the rhizome. The plant may look fine for a while, but then the thick base starts to soften, rot, and fall apart. The owner thinks the plant is difficult, but the real issue is planting technique. These plants want their roots attached to hard surfaces while the rhizome stays exposed to water. You can tie them with thread, use aquarium-safe glue, or wedge them gently into wood or rock. After the plant grows more leaves and the rhizome becomes longer, you can divide it. Use a clean cut and make sure each new piece has a few healthy leaves. Do not divide tiny, weak plants too early. Let them gain strength first. This is not the fastest free plant method, but it is one of the best for building structure. Stem plants fill the tank quickly. Rhizome plants make it look mature. Foreground plants are where beginners need the most honesty. A free carpet does not happen overnight in a low-tech tank. If someone tells you that you can get a perfect carpet in a few days with no patience, that is usually not realistic. But you can still use easy-spreading plants to fill the front slowly. Pearlweed can be trimmed low and replanted. Dwarf sag can send runners. Marsilea can spread with time. Cryptocoryne parva can work if you are patient, but it is slow. The trick is to plant small groups with enough spacing for growth, not so far apart that the foreground looks empty forever, and not so tight that the plants shade themselves. A low-tech carpet is not a quick trick. It is a slow reward. Now, filling a tank with free plants does not mean you should plant randomly everywhere. A tank can be full and still look messy. The layout matters. Use fast-growing tall plants in the background where they can hide equipment, fill vertical space, and create a green wall. Put medium-height plants around the sides, near wood, or behind stones. Attach Anubias, Java fern, or Bucephalandra to hardscape so they create detail without needing to be buried. Use floating plants only on part of the surface, so the lower plants still get light. Keep foreground plants in small groups and let them spread naturally. The goal is not just more plants. The goal is controlled growth. The difference between a beautiful jungle tank and a messy, overgrown tank is direction. When you trim, decide what each plant is supposed to do. Background stems should become thicker, so cut them when they reach the top and replant the strongest tips behind or beside the original group. Midground plants should frame the hardscape, so do not let them cover the entire front. Floating plants should support the system, not block the whole surface. Slow rhizome plants should stay visible, not get buried behind fast stems. Every time you replant a cutting, ask where that plant will grow in a month. If the answer is that it will block everything, choose another spot. There are also simple mistakes that kill propagated plants before they can help you. Cutting stems too short is one of them. A tiny, weak piece with almost no leaves has very little stored energy. It may survive, but it is more likely to melt or float away. Burying leaves under the substrate is another mistake. Leaves are not roots. If you bury them, they usually decay. Moving cuttings every day is also a problem. New roots need quiet. If you keep changing the position, the plant never settles. Strong light is another trap. Beginners think more light means faster growth, but in an unstable tank, too much light often means algae. Stable, moderate light is usually better than blasting the tank and hoping plants will win. Another mistake is adding too many fish while the plants are still weak. Fish create waste, and waste can become nutrients, but only if the tank has enough plant mass and bacterial stability to process it. In a new setup, too many fish can create ammonia issues, algae, and stress before the plants have recovered from planting. If your goal is a cheap, full-planted tank, let the plants establish first. The more stable the plants become, the easier the tank is to stock later. A planted aquarium is not just a container with decorations and fish. It is a living system. The plants are part of the filtration, part of the oxygen cycle, and part of the balance. A simple 30-day plan can make this easier. On the first day, fewer plants than you think you need, but choose plants that multiply well. Get a small amount of fast stem plants, 1 or 2 hardy rhizome plants if you want long-term structure, and a small portion of floating plants if your tank can handle them. Plant the stems with space between them. Attach rhizome plants properly. Add floaters carefully so they do not cover everything. During the first week, do not keep rearranging the tank. Keep the light schedule steady. Watch the plants, But do not panic over every old leaf. Many plants need time to convert to your water. During the second week, look for new growth. New leaves are more important than old leaves. If a plant loses one or two older leaves but produces healthy new growth, that is a good sign. Do not trim too early just because you are excited. Let the stems gain height and strength first. During the third week, you can begin trimming the healthiest stem plants if they have grown tall enough. Cut strong tops, remove the lower leaves, and replant them into open spaces. Leave the lower rooted stems in place so they can branch. During the fourth week, the tank should start looking thicker. The floating plants may have multiplied. The background may have more side shoots. The empty areas may begin to close. It will not look like a finished show tank yet, but it will look alive. After 2 or 3 months, this method becomes much more obvious. The tank that looked sparse in the beginning starts to feel full. The stem plants have been trimmed and replanted several times. The floating plants have helped absorb extra nutrients. The rhizome plants have settled onto wood or stone. The foreground may have started spreading. And the best part is that you did not have to keep buying new plants every time you saw an empty spot. You used the growth already happening inside the aquarium. This is the mindset shift that saves money. Do not look at a trimming session as maintenance only. Look at it as harvesting. You are harvesting new plants from the plants you already paid for. Every healthy stem you cut is another chance to fill a corner, thicken a background, start a second tank, trade with another hobbyist, or recover from a plant that failed somewhere else. Once you understand this, you stop treating plants like disposable decorations and start treating them like a renewable resource. The cheapest planted tank is not built by buying the cheapest random plants. It is built by buying the right plants once, keeping the tank stable, and letting those plants multiply. You do not need to fill every inch on day one. You do not need rare plants to have a beautiful aquarium. You do not need to throw away healthy trimmings and then buy replacements next week. What you need is a simple group of forgiving plants, steady light, patient trimming, and enough restraint to let the system grow. A lush, planted tank does not begin with spending a lot of money. It begins with choosing plants that want to grow for you, then giving them the time and stability to fill the tank on their own.